What is going on, everybody? Kim K with you back here for the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour. It is an off week for us, though. So, obviously, when it's off week, there's not as much time, there's not much stuff to talk about. Unfortunately, that's been the case during the off weeks. But Regency Media is going to start us off with a quick question. Are you going to be at Audium Chaudier? No, not this year, unfortunately. Not in the budget. And also, we've got some plans already. We are heading out to our home track at Sunset Speedway, hopefully to catch some weekly racing there. We've got a lot of SNS drivers that race out at Sunset Speedway, so we're very excited about that. Then the following week, it's the Ontario Sportsman Series and their first trip. I work with that series, so we're going to be focusing on that. So unfortunately, no, not for Chaudier. I'm not saying that it's never going to be in the possibilities of going there, but it is probably up there as one of my favorite tracks. And the action there is always great. I won't actually be able to catch the action the day of because, again, being involved in a lot of different forms of motorsports, you've kind of got to figure out where you're going to be required to be on a specific day. So I mean, it's not looking too bad right now. We're probably looking around 18 to 20 cars again, barring any significant changes. And then the biggest thing about all of this is that following Chaudier's an oval, Jeremy. Our iCar is the road course that we go to out in that's towards the end of the year, and then of course the big GP3R. We're going to take a look at the point standings thanks to Wesley Shaw, who's posted them on the community page. There's obviously going to be some big things that we're going to have to look at for the championship this year, because we know that there are some names that we are expecting that are going to be full-time, some other names that are not going to be racing for a couple of weeks. And then, of course, the big story after Chaudier is we're going back to Eastbound Park for our second race in Newfoundland, and I'm very curious to see how that race goes. One of the things I think that we can talk about is, Jim, 18 to 20 cars is enough for Chaudier. We don't need more than that. I've seen that. I mean, we've seen it before. We can't. Certain tracks can handle, like we can probably get up to 28 cars at Delaware. But again, think about it. You wreck and have a wreck like what we did at Delaware, and all of a sudden then all those cars that we brought to that racetrack and getting all of them wrecked, not a good idea. We also have to remember, though, that there's a lot of names that we had last year in the series that right now we aren't sure where their plans are. We know some of them aren't going to be on the road courses, or some of them aren't going to be on the ovals, or some of these aren't going to be here, aren't going to be there. There's not a ton of names that just aren't coming back at all. The only names right now that I believe we're not going to see racing in 2023 are Mark Dilley and TJ Rinamato, Rafael Lessard, Ray Cordemosh Jr. Those are the names kind of that out there. Don't expect to see them racing at any point. Hopefully that changes, though. I mean, I did, even if we could get Mark Dilley out for even a late model event, that would be great. I just want to see Mark race again. I don't want to see a driver go out with when they don't get a proper send off. And Mark has done so much for racing in Ontario on the NASCAR side of things. I mean, it would be great to have him back full time in the series, but he also knows, like, you got to go back. Like, I was 2 years old when he won the championship in NASCAR, so he's done it for enough years. But I mean, just for me, Mark Dilley is probably my guy. Like, he always drove the Dodge car. When I seen him at my first NASCAR race in 03, he had the big, and those things were big. Those Husky Intrepids, those NTN bearings Intrepids that he drove. It was the year after they switched from Ford to become part of the Mopar program in 03 with Dave Whitlock's team, and then he went to driving the Mopar, or not the Mopar, but driving the Dodge dealers cars, similar to looking to Casey Kane, and moved on from there in a combination effort with mixed motorsports, and really unfortunately, the last couple of years of Mark's career probably weren't indicative as to where he could have run. I think we know that he could have run better. Maybe the equipment wasn't there. Maybe the effort wasn't there on the team side of things. But he's certainly done an amazing job at bringing more and more partners into motorsports. A lot of the partners actually that were on his car were partnerships that he had created, that he had made. A lot of the RGC stuff is him as well. So Jeremy says, I think the series needs to take a good and hard look at Shannonville Motorsports Park. I know people who are involved with that track, and they've tried, and both say they're trying to work with what trying to work with NASCAR is a pain. Well, you have to remember, Jeremy, too, though, is that there's certain requirements that NASCAR has to have at certain racetracks, and that is a big part of it being difficult. I know there were some tracks that were supposed to be on the schedule this year, and they were so certain that they were going to be on it, but they didn't have the requirements that they needed. You have to abide by those. It's like there's no gray area. You have to remember is that NASCAR is liable when they have their competitors at a racetrack, and if they're on a track that's not safe, the drivers will tell them. And there was even some question, I think, as to certain places last year, whether or not they were completely appropriate for the series to go to. I know that it's not an easy thing, but you bring up Shannonville, and that's not the first time that I've heard this about people wanting us to go to Shannonville or Calabogie. Now, Calabogie is not possible. Calabogie and, as far as I know, Mont Tremblant both have standing orders with noise restrictions because of the local community. They don't want racing there because of the noise complaints, and that they're not allowed to have, at a certain decibel level, you're not allowed to have certain cars at the track anymore. That's the death of racetracks, is when you have the community that says, hey, we're putting this in and you guys can't make noise. And it's not an easy thing, because if you look at Sunset Speedway, for example, Sunset has people all around it, really. A lot of road course races, they're far away. Like, they don't have a lot of people near the track. So that's where there's a little bit of work around that. Now, I believe Shannonville has gone through some management changes in the last couple of years, and that makes it a possible place. But you have to have the certain requirements, whether it's the pavement, whether it's the retaining walls, whether it's facilities. There's a lot of things there. There's nothing that CTMP has that Shannonville doesn't, other than the fact that CTMP owns it. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Shanny's in the middle of farmers fields. Again, lots of race fans. Again, give it time. If they're putting a pitch together, that's the other thing too, is that we have to remember is that there's a lot of infighting to get a track to get onto the schedule. Because you have to remember, now NASCAR is going to be battling against all these other provinces that want NASCAR to come there. You also have to put up the money. Is my understanding is that you have to have a certain amount for NASCAR to come to your track. You have to have, and it cannot be certain things. They have to look at every aspect of it, right? There's this, exactly, insurance companies as well, as Jim points out. There's a lot of things that come to it, and it does probably have to do with a lot with what NASCAR's insurance will allow and what they won't allow. Now, obviously, we race on city streets, so it's, there's some tracks that we could definitely try. If I'm not mistaken, though, it was a while ago that when CASCAR raced at Shannonville, like, this is years and years and years ago. So it's probably been off of their radar. I mean, I look at it, and Jeremy, listen, I am all for going to new racetracks. I really am, especially places that we haven't been before, or even a return. I want to go and see them at Peterborough. Now, they won't ever go back to Peterborough, I don't believe, because the speeds just are too high, and the safety, I think, requirements there aren't applicable. Same with Flamborough. I think that's part of the reasons that they won't go there, is because I think there's some stuff that NASCAR has concerns about, and they're allowed to have concerns about them because that's their competitors, that's their fans, that's their officials that are at the track. So liability is a big, big thing. And believe me, no track wants to have um, a legal situation because somebody got hurt at a racetrack. And we very, very well could have seen it this past weekend. If you watched the Indy 500 this weekend, you saw an example of how dangerous motorsports is. And we've seen it. We saw it last year at Flamborough Speedway where a modified, not a Pinty's car, a modified flew over the fence or destroyed the fence and flew into the turn 3-4 area and hurt somebody. I believe it hurt or the car hurt a driver that was behind the wall. You can't have that. And NASCAR does not want that. Now, obviously, like I said, it is very, very different. Again, you got to think of two different things, though, Jeremy. Yeah, sure, the Cup cars is one thing. That's a different branch of this. Where you're thinking of Cup Series. Cup Series is different, right? This is under NASCAR International. So not everything that they do is going to be applicable, right? It is a tough deal, man. I totally agree with that. I'd love to see Shannonville. I'd love to see Peterborough. I'd love to see Flamborough. I'd love to see Oro Medonte. Hell, I'd love to see Sauble. I'd like us to go to Penticton. I'd love us to go out to Area 27. We got to look at certain things like costs, what's in the area. Can they get vendors? Can they get pit stalls? Can they get certain things? I think having a pit road within the center of the track is something that they want, although Chaudier doesn't have that, so I'm not entirely sure how it works. But I mean, like I said, I like that you're even putting that out there, that, hey, Shannonville, I'd like to see it. I don't know enough about the track to say that it fits or it doesn't fit. Like, I really don't. But it's not the first time I've heard that. It isn't. Multiple people have mentioned Shannonville before. It's the same thing when you go out to Quebec. The other thing is that Quebec also has Montmagny. Montmagny definitely is a track that I'd love to see the series go to. Riverside, love to see them come back to Riverside. I think the series needs to be willing to work with tracks because the harsh truth is the series needs Shannonville and its fans infinitely more than Shannonville needs the series. Well, then so what is the point that you're trying to make, though? Because you're trying to say that you want the series to go there, but then you're saying that Shannonville doesn't need them. So this is where we need to kind of figure out what is it that we really want here. Do you really want the series to go there, or do you just want more racing at Shannonville? Because the reality is it going to make a big enough difference? Is it going to put enough a good enough race? Now, Shannonville's been around, right? At India, Jim, I'm telling you, their insurance companies would be, because, and I don't know how you fix that either, Jim, because by all things accounted, apparently the way that the wreck happened is it didn't break the tether, it broke the wheel nut, and that's what caused the tire to fly off, which shouldn't have happened regardless, but that was casualties. If that goes into the stands, that's killing somebody. More than one, probably. At the trajectory and the speed that tire was going, we saw it, unfortunately, back in, I think it was 99 at Michigan. Was it Michigan? I think it was at Michigan. It was either Michigan or California with CART. And that's the type of thing that the Pinty Series and NASCAR in Canada cannot afford to have, is some sort of an injury. Now, obviously, our drivers, I think, are pretty good. They don't make mistakes to that degree, and we don't have stuff that anything can really happen. My point is the series is in a position, but you don't know if they are being picky, right? You're hearing it from word of mouth. My biggest thing is, Jeremy, is that what I've learned through doing this is that you actually have to go to the source. If somebody is telling you this, it could be the truth, but it could also not be the truth. That's the hardest thing about it. Quint West fans aren't willing to drive 2 hours to Bowmanville when we can drive 15 minutes to. So, absolutely true. Charlotte IRL. Well, I think there was a couple of them, Jim. I think there was CART and IRL where it happened, and we don't need it happening again. But Jeremy, I agree with you. But the problem is that there's fans everywhere. So NASCAR cannot accommodate everybody, right? They've got to decide where they're going to go. Now, for them, CTMP makes the most money, easily this past week, and it brought up a ton of money. Toronto brings them a ton of. Now that's the one that I'd be interested in. If they were to get rid of Toronto, make it Shannonville. It's just the problem is that Toronto is the big mecca center of the province, and you're being seen by a lot of people that are coming there for the Free Friday. So that's where it benefits. I'm not sure about money making for them there, but in terms of exposure, it is the best exposure along with GP3R. So if I'm going to take a track off the circuit, for me, it's ICAR. Like, I no offense to my Quebec friends, but I do not think ICAR is a very good track. I don't think it's produced great racing in the last couple of years. Now, that's not saying that it can't. It has in the past. Maybe it's the current layout. It's the current drivers. I don't know. But ICAR to me was the one that always it seems like for whatever reason the last couple of years it's been not very interesting. When you have the races that we've had at CTMP, GP3R, it makes it a little difficult to see a track like that, and then we don't really see that. Shannonville, though, I would not turn it away, though. I would say that if you want to do some sort of expansion in the series, and I know that there are people that do want that. There are people that really want the series to be up to 20 races. Now, I don't personally think our teams can handle that. I just think financially that's way too much to ask, especially if the revenue that they're getting back isn't enough. And again, those type of things aren't made public. So whatever they're taking home, I'm sure is not what they would need to do 20 races here. But we're up to 14. And I could see 14 definitely is a solid amount. I don't think we need to go more than that. I personally believe that 14 is where we're going to stay for next year. I think that the only reason we're getting 2 Schweiken this year is I think because another track fell through. And I believe it was going to happen, and then it just didn't. And so that's why we have 2 Schweiken this year. That could be wrong. It could very well be wrong. And but that's what we're doing. We're just talking about it, right? I like the idea, though. To me, I would say that that's one, Al, but there's one for kart as well. It was a tire that went into the stands, I'm pretty sure, at Michigan. Because I believe it was Adrian Fernandez's tire that went in there. Either way, it doesn't need to happen. So, I will say Radenson, it's beautiful. Chaudier is the next track on the circuit. Now, I don't know if people are aware that Valley Junction is where Chaudier is, and I believe there's a huge Olymel plant there. Now, Olymel is the company that owns Pinty's. And so there should be a big presence there at that track. I really just don't want any weather because the place it's been affected by weather like several times. And I don't know how the setup is for you, Ryan, in terms of when it's racing where you can actually be. But all I can tell you is just listen. Just listen, because the fans at Chaudier are buck wild, and the announcer goes like no one's business. He is so much fun to listen to. You can actually routinely hear it on the broadcast because they're next to beside. They're beside normally Adam. I'm not sure if it's going to be Adam and Clinton or if it's just going to be Adam or maybe neither one of them. I'm not entirely sure who's going to be there because if I'm not mistaken, APC is also racing that same night. So I'm not sure what's going to happen because I think APC is at Flamborough the same night. So Adam will be there for sure. So then it would probably be just Adam, and Clinton will probably be with Greg for the Flamborough APC race. Greg's going to fill for him? Okay, so there you go. Wes knows everything. Wes knows all. I was just saying, when are we going to get up there, Wes? Right? You and I are going to announce the race soon, right? I really like hearing him flowing, and I can't understand one where he says, it's true, honestly, Jim. I I can't remember the announcer's name though. He's so fun to listen to. And that's what I want. That's what I want when I'm watching racing. I really like that excitement. Like Lee Diffie, if you guys like Lee Diffie's call of the Indy 500, man, what? That's a booth that I love to listen to in terms of motorsports. Lee Diffie, Townsend Bell, and James Hinchcliffe is probably my favorite. Just my favorite booth for. And this, listen, I love Adam. I love Dave. I love Clinton. But I think they're even surpassing them now in my favorites. And hopefully this doesn't make my show canceled for next week. But I love that. I absolutely love when you have somebody that is so passionate, so interested into it. And you know what, Jeremy? That's the key thing, though. There's multiple sides to it, right? Something has to be done. They have to keep trying. They can't give up. You can't give up. That's the thing. And that's the key. You have a key point in your statement right there. It says Shanny is better now than ever. Better now than ever before. That is what's attractive. Now, if they can get a partner to be up there and present the race, if it's got all the safety requirements, if it's got everything in, it's just, what do you take out, right? That's the question mark. There's going to be question marks regardless. Now, I'd be interested in seeing Shannonville, because I personally think if you do that, we would get more Ontario racers out there, because Shannonville's a beloved racetrack. I would get J.R. Fitzpatrick for that race. Absolutely, 100%. I need, before he ever retires racing, I need to see J.R. Fitzpatrick on a road course in this series again. We've seen him do some ovals back in 2020, but we need J.R. Fitzpatrick back on road courses. I think obviously Gary Clute would do well, Malcolm Strawn, Daniel Bois, the regulars that typically go out there, they would do a great job there. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love what I heard for the Indy 500. I think the excitement level it brings fans in. For me, that's what brought me into NASCAR in the first place, was the excitement level that I used to get from Alan Bestwick. He was always going to be my hero for my motorsports commentary icon. That is the guy for me who sold me on motorsports, especially because they were doing the 2002 Daytona 500, him, Wally, and Benny, and they sold it. And that's what a lot of people need, man. You just need somebody to sell it to you in that type of a way with that excitement. They aren't always the most exciting races, but it should be something. I think it will take somebody offering him a ride, unfortunately. JR is killing it in terms of his APC ride. He's planning on doing a couple more. He actually just raced the Bill Zardo Memorial at Flamborough Speedway. He won in the late models there for Chris House. Funny story, actually. One of Chris House's crew members is my cousin. Again, we hadn't connected for years, but that was a small connection that brought us together. So he actually cruised on that car that went to Victory Lane, and then he was racing Ralph Book's 64 car and took that. Didn't have a great finish. He said he never really makes mistakes like that where he spins out by himself, but he did. But JR, I want to get him in the OSS series this year, the Ontario Sportsman Series. We could use somebody like JR in this series. I mean, we've got some great stars and great veterans, but having somebody like JR is invaluable. And I definitely would like to see more of him out of the APC series. Honestly, I know he's been doing it and he's been killing it, but APC is somebody else, is some other series this year that I'm very curious to see how they go. Years ago, JR got a ride for the Truck Series in Michigan. Obviously not being well known. He wasn't overly busy, but he talked to me and my dad for about 20 minutes. Such a humble guy. and very, very chummy too. Like if you go and see him, and you haven't seen him in a while, he always makes a point of conversation. And but again, I think we really didn't, when he was in the series. I don't think people really could tell how good he was going to be, and we still need to get JR, I think, full time again. And it's unfortunate because for a partner, I think he'd be a really good driver for people to partner with. It's just a matter of there's just not enough cars and not enough seats in the series right now. When you have a lot of guys coming in from Quebec that have a lot of revenue, that have a lot of money, that can get seats. But I wouldn't be shocked if he could get an opportunity and race in the series again. Did he provide his own car when he was a regular, or did he? So he drove for his dad, his dad's team, and his dad's team was with JR, and it was JR, John Fitzpatrick, and Don Thompson, but that went away, and he did a couple of races down south, but when he came back, I don't believe he's had the same opportunity since. And they ran into sponsorship troubles. He had opportunities before. He had Schick on the car for a little bit for a season. They had Milwaukee, Old Milwaukee, I think it was Old Milwaukee, or Milwaukee Tool, I think it was, that was on the car for a season, and then nothing, unfortunately. And they came back for 4 races in 2020 with 22 Racing, with Party Casino, and didn't really have as good of a 4-race stint as I think he was hoping. It'd been a while out of those cars, but I still believe that his real calling is road course racing. I think he's been one of the best ever to compete. And again, if we're looking for Ontario talent, he would be one of those guys. I still think, though, that the APC series has shown that their drivers have proven they belong in the Pinty series. No word of a lie. Now, the APC series this year has done some major things by giving an opportunity for the champion to get a ride at the Snowflake 100. I believe it was the Snowflake, not the Snowball, but the Snowflake 100 this year at Five Flags, and a fully funded ride. They're getting the opportunity to drive. That is something I think would be really cool for the Pinty series. I don't know what route they would go, whether it would be an ARCA ride or for me, it would be like a truck ride would be the big deal. That the series champion gets an opportunity to race a truck at, I don't know, Martinsville, or I think Pinty's is very, very still represented at Bristol. So maybe an opportunity to race at Bristol the following season. That would be a really cool initiative. I don't know, however, what the logistics are with that, but like if you get like, for us, for example, we used to have that opportunity to see our champion race against other champions in the All-Star Showdown, and that hasn't happened for many years. We got to see Andrew Ranger, Scott Steckley, DJ Kennington. DJ even finished runner-up in that race at least once. We also got guys like Jason Bowles to come out and race in the Pinty Series, back then the Canadian Tire Series, that came out of it. I think that would be a really cool thing. And as Jeremy points out, Stuart Friesen would be the guy. He's got that 62 truck that he's run occasionally. Have the Pinty Series champion get an opportunity to race. That would be a cool initiative. I think that would get some good attention and get our driver, our champion, an opportunity to race in a big time Cup Series, or not Cup Series, but Truck Series event. Hell, if you get the opportunity to have the Cup Series in Quebec, why not? IndyCar used to give Lights, now NXT champion, $1 million to use towards an IndyCar ride for the next year. That's true. I don't think that we're looking at that type of money here, Jim. I like the idea of like a scholarship type of deal. I don't think it would be enough. Like, we're talking, you're going to need multi-million dollars to get up there and be able to race multi races in the truck series. However, though, I like the idea of maybe a Stuart Friesen, somebody that has multiple trucks. I think RS1 out in BC was going to do this, was that their champion would be able to drive a truck at Martinsville, I believe it was. I don't know if that ever happened, but that was one of their big concepts, and I would like to see something like that here, whereas our series champion, if it's Marc-Antoine Cameron, Mark gets an opportunity to race in the truck series at Bristol. Obviously for him, it would have to be with a Chevy team, so that would be kind of where there could be some issues with who gets to sit where, but I still like the idea. Even if it was with Venturini Motorsports and ARCA, that's a top ride in the ARCA series, and short tracks is where these guys and gals race. So that could be something that's possible, a road course even. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like if we're going to take this opportunity here, maybe you use it with the ARCA side of things, because maybe that money isn't as we're not as far apart there. And hell, make it a Pinty's ride. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, Mike, Mike says was great seeing you and the crew a few weeks ago. Yeah, we're planning actually on going back to Sunset. I was thinking about doing. Unfortunately, can't do Full Throttle this weekend. Some stuff's come up, so that isn't gonna unfortunately be able to happen for going to the OSS race at Full Throttle on Saturday. But next week, we were thinking about going to the APC series at Flamborough. The schedule there is just Can-Am Midgets and the APC series, so I'm not really looking at that anymore. I'm thinking more or less of going back to Sunset, hopefully next weekend, to see our SNS drivers. We pretty much, like, the amount of mini stock drivers that we have that are willing to run our decals is insane. And then there's hot rods and modifieds, everything like that. It's going to be a good time. And then we're back for the OSS series opener, I guess, for Sunset. So yeah, I can't do racing this weekend, unfortunately, though, Mike. I'll have to be at home. But yeah, it's racing is on, and I'm very curious to see what else now. There's some names that we're expecting. We're expecting that we're going to see a couple more names back this season. So if I'm looking at Trayton Lapsovich, we expect now is going to be full time. It's not still confirmed, but we expect that. Marc-Antoine Cameron, expect him full time. Lacroix, Gannett, they're all full time. LP, DJ, JP, Dexter, Larry, and Alex are all full time. Now we don't have confirmation on Daniel Bois, still expected, not doing full season for them. Malcolm Strawn not doing full season. Brandon Watson, we expect him for full. Wallace Stacy, Andrew Ranger, Glenn Stiers, Thomas Nouveau, except for Eastbound Park, will be full time as well. Gary Clute, Donald Teach, Brandon McFarlane, Matt Scannell, Josh Collins, Jocelyn Facteau, Ryan Clute, Kyle Steckley, Herbie Drescher, Michael Gowdy, Peter Clute, and Simon Charbonneau. 29 drivers after 2 races in the series. Now, who do we expect to see at Chaudier? There's not supposed to be much change here. We know that we're going to see the regulars. So, Marc-Antoine Cameron, Trayton, Kevin Lacroix, Alex Gannett, LP Dumoulin, DJ Kennigan, JP Bergeron, Dexter Stacy, Larry Jackson, Alex Tagliani. That's 10 right there. Then we're going to hopefully get the Jim Bray Racing 98. That's not confirmed, though. So Brandon Watson, Wallace Stacy, Andrew Ranger, Glenn Stiers, Thomas Nouveau. That's 15. Donald Teage. That's 16. We can expect to see Josh Collins and Brandon McFarland 17-18. Now comes the question marks. And so right now, I'm thinking we are going to see at least Simon Dionvien and Matthew Kingsbury. That will put us at 20 cars for Chaudier. Anybody else, including that number 98, would be a welcome surprise. Give us 21 if the 98 does end up coming with Malcolm Strawn. I don't know if they're actually going to be able to do that financially wise. I just, that's kind of hard to say. The other name for me that I would love to see, there's two of them really, is Alex Labbe, because he's racing at Portland the week before, so they should be okay for that. But Alex Labbe and Raphael Lessard, if there's rides available, I don't know. DJK, Dumoulin competition. I mean, Dumoulin's put him in the car before. I mean, I'd love to see them come out and race. Those are their home tracks. So it would be great to see it. I don't think we're going to see it this week, though, unfortunately, or next week. Is it disappointing that Raphael Lessard's career has kind of gone the way it's gone? Yeah, but it's not unexpected, I guess. I think this seems to kind of be the trend of things, is that drivers that tend to get opportunities that go down south and then it just doesn't work out and they come back. And I mean, we've seen it countless times. Pete Shepard, J.R. Fitzpatrick, J.P. Bergeron. It is a tough deal to go out and race and try to do it with the funds that you need. That's the biggest thing. And all these names that you see scrolling across the bottom of the screen here, it's not a given that they're going to make each and every week. There's some guys that they scrape and claw to try and make it to these events. And it's never a known thing what the money situation is going to be like. I think that we've got some other names potentially for the future, but are they ever going to be given the opportunity? Because it's a tough deal to try and find, first off, the funding to do it on a regular basis. But by doing what we are hoping to do by having shows like this is to showcase some of those names, showcase how they've done. I think if I had to pick, Chaudier is probably the one that I'm expecting chaos. I just, the way that CTMP ended with Trayton and Marc Antoine, not to mention how Sunset ended. So as far as my understanding was, there was some shenanigans that took place at the end of Sunset. I wouldn't be shocked if those happen. I would, and you know what, Jim? I know you've put it as NASCAR has a way to suck money out. No. That's racing. All of racing does it. It's everywhere. Yeah, Jeremy, Pete has a business that I believe he still runs out of North Carolina. And yeah, he's doing good. I believe he was up last year actually at Delaware for a couple of races. So, but let's just I'm just going to take a quick look here at what Chaudier gave us last year. Now we had 23 cars. I think that might be a bit of a stretch to get to that point for this year. 20, maybe to 21 is definitely doable. We're not going to have TJ Renamato in the field this year. Not going to have Brian Cathcart in the field. No Sam Fellows. No Raphael Lessard as of now. No Mark Dilley. So where the field's going to come from, no Gary Clute. So there's going to be some change there. Ranger, Cameron, I think are your two favorites. They were by far the best last year. Cameron was actually the best of them. He led the most laps at Chaudier. I don't think that there's going to be any change with how the 96 has been these first couple years. Now, remember, LP Dumoulin was the guy who won the pole last year, so he could pull out a very good victory here. Benoit Legionnaire as the new crew chief last year. I think that they're going to be much better. I think from what I've seen already, LP has definitely got some more fire. Hopefully, we don't see what we saw last year, which was a big wreck with JP Bergeron and TJ Renamato, where JP's car ended up going over top of TJ's car, and significant damage was done to that number 2. Had some shenanigans that took place early in the race, some guys that got into each other. You had a mistake with the brake. Cameron, I believe, pulling off too early or staying out. I can't remember what it was, if he pulled off too early or too late. Lost all that track position and still came back. It is something that should be fun to see, because I'm looking at the results here. You have a white car, a Paillet car, DJK car, a Dumoulin competition car, a 22 racing car, and an EHR car in the top 6 last year. Entirely possible that we could have that happen again. I'm very curious to see where we end up here. Now, in terms of the laps that were led last year, we had 4 leaders at this racetrack last year, and one of the names that had an awful race was Kevin Lacroix. Finished 13th. He was 2 laps down at the end of the race. Not really a performance that we're used to seeing out of him. Trayton Lapcevich's engine let go only 100 laps into the race. Didn't really get an opportunity to show what he had. Remember, this is the key thing here. 300 laps this time around. Not 250, not 200, 300. So you're going to have a longer race. You're going to have... We saw how chaotic it got last year with only 250. Now, my hope is that the field's a little bit more close. It's been very close these last couple of races, these first 2 races of the season, actually. We've seen some really good competition. Drivers coming from the back to the front, back to the front, back to the front. And that's not something that you should see. We really shouldn't see guys that go to the back and then have to work their way back up again. But that's what's been happening. I look for guys like Matthew Kingsbury, Simon Dionvian. Like, Simon Dionvian had a top 10 last year. Larry Jackson finished 11th. He was pretty good in that first Sunset race. Really competitive. Up in, I think it was like 7th or 8th place before they had some issues with Ange Ranger. But I like what I see in the field this year. I still think that the competition, though, is going to be between Marc-Antoine Cameron and Trayton Upson. Now, Trayton only qualified 6th quickest last year. And if I'm going to say somebody here, yeah, it was two pit stops this year instead of 1. And so does that mean 2 breaks? I don't think so. I think it's only one halftime break, right? So I don't know when they're going to do that, because it would be 150 and what? I think it's going to be 1 at 150, Jim, because they can't do green flag stops here because they don't have a pit road. So obviously the question marks are going to be where certain people fill. Well, one of the guys you have to look at is Thomas Nouveau. Thomas has had an awful start to his season. And it's not really of his own making, I don't believe. I mean, the first race of the season, they had mechanical issues. And then the second race of the season, they had mechanical issues that were caused by contact with another car. So Thomas really needs a solid start. And ovals aren't his thing. I expect that in Toronto, GP3R, he will be very good. I hope, at least. Because that's where he comes from. He comes from road racing. And he really didn't get an opportunity to really do it at CTMP. Didn't get an opportunity to qualify, so we couldn't really see. Didn't really get a great chance to even practice. So Thomas has had a very tough start to his season with the Dave Jacobs number 24. But when we go back and you've got a race like 300 laps here, I don't know when the last time was that the series is done at 300 lapper. I might have to take a couple years look back, because it's definitely been a while. So if I go with LP Dumoulin, I'm just going to take a quick look back to our previous years and see how many laps. Oh, it says miles. It doesn't tell me the laps. That's not going to help me. That's not going to help me at all. Either way, I'm going to go off and say probably been a while. 300 laps. I would actually think it would probably be at Chaudier is where it was last. That maybe Sunset. I think Sunset we did 300 lappers previous. So if we say Chaudier, we didn't get a full race at Chaudier either back in 2019 because of the rain that Raphael won. So was that intended to be a 300? It was intended to be a 300 lapper. And we got 286 done. So going back to 2019, so it'll be the first time in several seasons that we're going to go back to 300 laps at Chaudier. In that race, you didn't have a field like you have now. There's a difference between having 17 cars and 21, 22. Now, we had 23 last year. You had less laps, though. So this year, potentially 20, 21 for 300 laps. But I think the field's much closer. You have spec motor. And the field has some stars in it, like Brandon Watson. If Brandon can get away from the chaos that happened last year, if Trayton can overcome, if he can overcome mechanical issues, because that's what's happened, if DJ can continue to do what he did last year, I'm really looking at this going, there's no way I can pick somebody, because obviously the 96, I think, is the guy. He is the one that you're going to have to watch all season long, even after all the stuff that happened with that team. I mean, I'm looking at this here going to Chaudier. The last time we ran a 300 lapper, Brandon White was in this race. And that's tough to see. I know that there's a lot of people in the series that miss Brandon White, but seeing him in 8th place there is Alex Labay was a part of this race, though, back in 2019 for Dave Jacobs. Now, I don't know if Dave would do a 3-car effort. Probably not. The other question is Dexter Stacy okay? I've heard that Dexter has had some injury issues. Not regarding, actually, his wreck at Talladega. But if he's got some injury issues, Chaudier probably isn't the place that you'd want to race, because you're not ever going to get a break. You are just constantly turning. It'll be a very interesting thing to check and see here. I would love to go out and say that there's going to be a big name that would be in this race. I can't really say right now. I think right now, Marc-Antoine Cameron is the guy to watch in practice and qualifying and the race. To me, it's can Trayton Lapsovich keep up the pace? That's going to be very interesting for me, because Trayton, we've seen the first 2 races of the season. I don't expect that the 96 is going to give him any sort of room. I don't expect that the 27 will give him a ton of room either. Now, was it warranted? Probably. I think that there's going to be issues regardless. I think at the end of the day, the 96 is always aggressive. Mark is always aggressive. He always races people very, very, very aggressively. Did he deserve the bump? Probably. Based off of their history. But Mark said he would have done it himself. And that's the biggest thing is that Mark said he would have done the exact same move. I think Mark was a little bit proud, honestly. And my people must say, like, why would he be proud of Trayton? Because Mark would have done it himself. He says it's a good driver. He's a good young driver. And we've kind of seen this in the Cup Series where drivers, when they get to a certain age, they peak and they do very, very well. We saw it with Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin. It seems to be around that 40 years of age. And they peak and they do exceptionally well. Now, Mark isn't 40. He's 44 this year. So he's not going to be at this forever. But I tell you, if this is how the GM Paillet program is going to start, whoever they decide to keep bringing in, if it's going to be Ranger, if it's going to be Marc-Antoine Cameron, if they ever expand to doing 2 Paillet racing cars out of the Paillet racing shop, they're set for a while here. You have to consider the upgrade in what they've done. I think 22 Racing is showing this year that they aren't messing around. I think Trayton Lapsovich, Kyle Steckley, Alex Tagliani are primed and ready to go. I think DJK, he is ready to go. Based off of how his performance was to start the season. I think they had some struggles. Like, he was out to lunch really early at Sunset, but they fought back, and they fought back hard, and he came from the back. He was awful in the first half of the Sunset race, and he would probably tell you that. They were awful. And they came back and finished 6th. I think CTMP is always a struggle for, like, he's not a road racer. DJ will admit that. He's done well on the road courses. He's won on road courses. It's not his forte. So if we go, okay, we're going to go to Chaudier. Who are you going to go and say is going to be the winner? Well, for me, obviously, it just depends on when we get that entry list, when we see who is going to be out there. Again, I expect a certain amount of drivers are going to be there. But there's always surprises. Like, I wasn't expecting Herbie Drescher to be there at CTMP or Michael Gowdy, and both of them showed up, and we had a field of 25 cars. We could have had, if everybody had showed up that was initially or even rumored to come, we would have had up to 30 cars potentially for CTMP. Unbelievable. I'm talking if we had Sam Fellows in a car, we had Brent Weller in a car, if we had David Thorndike out there, Donald Teege out there, if we had Trevor Monahan out there, all of a sudden it's like, wow, we theoretically, Simon Dionvien, we could have had 30 cars right there. That would have been insane. 30 cars back at CTMP. It has been a while. Like, we've seen, and it's not the first time we've seen 35 cars in the Pinty series before. It has been a long time. Like, we go back to 2013, 36 at CTMP. 36! Like, it's almost unbelievable when you think about how many guys and gals. Now, mind you, that was when the truck series was also there, so we had a couple of names that would come in and actually race. But you look at some of those names, like, a lot of them had their own cars. A lot of these names aren't in the series anymore, or they've taken their cars elsewhere. Like a Trevor Siebert, for example, like their stuff is out west now. They're not coming back. Fitzpatrick Motorsports not coming back. Derek White's team likely not going to come back. Although I've heard rumors that White Motorsports was planning on coming back at some point. Hugo Vanini, well, that's a name that I don't... it's been a while. James Van Domselaar, that was a Western driver. Kevin Dowler, that was a driver from out west. So lots of names. I definitely think that there's options out there in the future, but as always, thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to get more into the Chaudier talk next week. Obviously, it would be fun if we could have a race this weekend. Unfortunately, CTMP was last week, and we don't have anything happening this week, so we'll tune in with you guys next week, talk more about it. Have yourselves a great night. Cam K here on G-Force TV for the Power Hour.